Hi, my name is Caitlin, but you can call me Cruzy, and the time has come for my honest reflections on the Pacific Crest Trail. For those of you who don't know me, I thru hiked the Pacific Crest Trail from March to September of 2025, and I also hiked Te Araroa, which is New Zealand's long trail, in 2023 to 2024. I released a documentary called You Bow to No One, which tells the story of my PCT hike, and it's been over 3 months since I released that film and almost 5 months since I completed the PCT. So now that enough time has passed, I think I can at least try to articulate my feelings about my experience on the PCT. It's hard to do because, as I said in a previous video, I don't have grand epiphanies to share. I did not become an entirely new person. One of my friends on the trail who I hiked with for a very long time said something the day that we reached Canada that really stuck with me. And he said, I know that when I reach the terminus, the person that I want to be isn't going to be waiting there for me. And that really stuck with me because I think sometimes I have believed, well, if I just hike Te Araroa, if I just hike the PCT, I'll reach the end and I will finally be the person who I've always wanted to be, the person who I'm meant to be. And I think the illusion of through hiking is that it's not this switch that you flip. You know, completing a through hike is an amazing accomplishment. It's something to be so proud of, but there is still so much work to do. There is still so much to learn, and change and growth comes in a lot of small moments in life, and it is a continual process. You don't reach the terminus and then reach the terminus of your personal growth. That sounded so cheesy, my God. I think what is so enchanting to me about through hiking is waking up in a new place every day, learning how little you are capable of living off of, just this constant feeling of adventure, which was something I chased very fiercely for a lot of my adult life. When I was a teenager, all I wanted to do was go on adventures. I wanted to go to Middle Earth and I wanted to go to Narnia and I wanted to be in all these fantasy worlds. And I think through hiking is where I really feel closest to that, where I really feel like I've stepped into a different world. I've stepped into a completely different lifestyle, a completely different reality. Of course, that's not true because every time we get into town, we check the news and are harshly reminded that we are not in a different reality. But I just fell so in love with the freedom and the challenge and just the really unique relationships that you can build on the trail. You can learn so much about somebody before you even know their last name. I can know your cat hole schedule and not know what you do for a living or even know your real name because we use trail names so often. And it's really fascinating the bonds that you can build out there. So, to me, through hiking is so many different things. It is a constant teacher. It is exhausting at times. It is dreadfully boring at times, but it's just a really, really special thing that I stumbled onto. And yeah, the PCT was no exception to that, of course. So let me talk about some of my favorite moments on the PCT, my favorite sections. Anyone who has talked to me about the PCT knows that my favorite section was hands down the High Sierra. I spent the entire desert super nervous about going in there. I did not know what to expect. I had never really hiked in the snow before, even though I am from a very snowy state. I had never used an ice axe. I had never navigated that type of terrain. So I was definitely feeling apprehensive. But once I got in there, I was just awestruck. For those of you who have seen the film, I absolutely love this section about the Sierra. There is so much good footage, but there is also so much that I didn't capture. The reality of the Sierra was getting up between 2 and 4 every morning and hiking in the dark to beat the snow melt. We were sometimes post holing as early as 3 a.m., and sometimes we were cursing quite a bit because of it. We went over several very daunting mountain passes. We had a couple of close calls while glissading, which I feel is hands down the most dangerous thing I encountered while on the PCT. And we had mice chew through our tents. We had illness sweep through our trail family. It was chaotic. We almost ran out of food. And there was a time when I was like, are we ever gonna make it out of here. But the otherworldly beauty of the Sierra is just really special. And while the rest of the PCT is beautiful and the other sections offer up their own challenges, the High Sierra is unique when it comes to the rest of the trail because it feels different. It feels like so much more than this straightforward walk to Canada. We were getting lost, we were slipping and sliding, we were having what can only be described as a grand adventure. And it really bonded us as a trail family. The people who I hiked the Sierra with are the people I hiked all the way to Canada with, and I would do it again. Wink, wink. And yeah, it was just a really special time, really challenging, probably the most exhausted I've ever been in my life. I think one day I slept for like 18 hours and woke up and was like, I'm very happy to go back to sleep. But it was just unlike anything I had ever experienced. The remoteness, the solitude out there, it was really, really, really special. Some of my other most favorite memories on the PCT are simply the days where we arrived at a beautiful place, looked around, and said, this will do. Even if we had only hiked for a few hours, even if we had only hiked 10 miles, we would just set our stuff down and spend the rest of the day taking it all in and hanging out and enjoying the views. But while there were what feels like an endless string of highlights and high points, there were some low points as well. There were very few of them, but I think it's important to be realistic when I reflect on the PCT because I wasn't happy every day. There were some days when I just had too much time to think and I overthought past experiences. I overthought relationships that I had and that I had lost. And some days I felt really sad. Some days I felt really overwhelmed by just the amount of time I had alone with my brain. And one specific low point that I had, and it's really just one, but there was a lot of lead up to it. And that is, I really struggled socially on the PCT. It's not something that I expected, it's not something that I experienced for the entirety of the desert and pretty much the entirety of the Sierra. But once we got deeper into NorCal and especially Oregon, I felt very overwhelmed by the amount of people that I was encountering on the PCT. And of course, I knew that it was a popular trail. I knew that it was going to be populated, but I understood that in more of an abstract way. And it excited me in the beginning because I wanted to meet people and I wanted to find all sorts of personalities to hike with and I wanted to get to know everyone. I was a social butterfly at the beginning of the trail, but as it went on and as I started to feel like I had my trail family, as I started to get more tired, things started to feel less like the honeymoon phase and more like routine. I really lost more patience than I would have liked for the high level of social interactions that I had on the trail. There is a scene in the documentary where I say that I learned things about myself that I really didn't want to know. And one of those things, which is important to know, I not exactly overjoyed about it, but it's just the way that I am is that I have a hard social limit. I have a strict social battery. And when I have reached capacity, I've reached capacity. And I think there were moments when I just felt incapable of having another introductory conversation or having another conversation about gear or, the things that hikers really fall back on because hiking is all we know when we're on a through hike. I just struggled more and more as the trail got more and more populated, as the Sobos came in, as later start Nobos started to catch up to us. There were lashers and day hikers and weekend warriors, and I just felt like I just wanted it to stop some of the time. And with that came quite a bit of guilt as well because I maybe wasn't being as warm and friendly as I normally am. And it made me feel unfamiliar to myself. And it made me feel like I was letting my trail family down and letting my fellow hikers down just because I couldn't sometimes bear the thought of having another conversation. So that was something for me to really face head on, and it wasn't always the prettiest thing. Obviously, it's never nice to feel like you're being standoffish or you're being even rude. Um, that was my biggest struggle on the PCT because I'm normally a very open, warm, nice person, but I just was at my limit. That being said, of course, I met a lot of lovely people on the trail, especially trail angels. And the thing about trail angels is sometimes the best ones are those that don't even expect to be trail angels. Maybe they pick you up on the side of the road and they've never done something like this before, or they throw you a banana because that's all they happen to have in their car. So many of them would say something to the effect of, well, if I could just go back in time, if I could just be 20 years younger, 40 years younger, 60 years younger, I would love to be out there doing what you're doing. And I think my biggest takeaway from doing the PCT is really the peace of knowing that even though there were low points, even though I wasn't, this bundle of joy every single day, even though I had moments where I was disappointed in myself, I really did take an amazing opportunity and run with it. And I have no regrets about that. And I'm very happy that when I'm older, when I'm aging, and when I feel like I can't hike to this level anymore, hike at all, I can always look back and know that when the opportunity was there for me, I took it. And I'm really proud of that. So I guess to wrap this video up, um, I've had a lot of younger people also tell me, like, oh, I'm so jealous that this is what you do with your life, and I'm so jealous of all your travels. And, a couple months ago, my childhood friend, my best friend from back when I was like 4 or 5, she just had her first baby. And it really just helped me understand that there are many different ways to be successful. There's many different ways to be 32 years old and feel like you're doing it right and feel happy with how you're living your life and feel happy with your decisions and the paths that you have taken and are taking. And there's no one way to do it. And I have a great sense of peace about that. We all have something to be proud of, whether it's hiking from Mexico to Canada or bringing a tiny little human into the world or a lot of things in between. So that is it. I feel like this video is something that I needed to do to kind of close the chapter on the Pacific Crest Trail era of my life, not because I'm over it, but because there are plenty of new chapters ahead, specifically coming up in the next couple of months. So if you are at all interested in watching a silly girl from Minnesota hike very long distances and yap about it and make films about it, stay tuned because there's a lot coming up. If you have any other questions or you want to share your experience with me, please do. I've really appreciated everyone who's communicated with me in the comments on my previous videos, so let me know what you're thinking. Um, all right, I am not made to talk to a camera, so I'm gonna go and I'll see you on the trail. I think that's good.